It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, folks, today we're going to jump on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board. I want to share my thoughts on Xerox's third quarter. I'll start out by saying this. Congratulations, Xerox, on your 30% growth in revenue. I wanted to say that because, when Xerox bought Lexmark and when Xerox bought IT Savvy, there was folks out in the industry just convinced that Xerox would go bankrupt. They got too much debt and all the blah, blah, blah we heard. And I kept telling those folks, well, the revenue's going to show up. You got to wait for the revenue to show up. You got to wait for the cost synergies. You got to wait for them to start making some cuts and saving some money and increasing the profitability along with the increase in revenue. And then you'll see a difference. Well, guess what? The revenue's showing up. We're seeing those cost cuts come into play. So at the end of the day, I think Xerox is going in the right direction. Are they there? Hell no. Do they got a lot of work to do? Hell yes. But I will say this, reinventing a 100-year-old business whose core deliverable is print in the eyes of Wall Street is a pretty tough thing to do. Would it be great if Xerox could go private? I've talked about that before. And it would be great if Xerox could go private. Reinvent the company, then maybe come back out public. But right now, they're in the eyes of Wall Street. Right now, their CEO has to go on a quarterly earnings call every single quarter and share what's going on at Xerox. And he's been truthful, he's been honest, he's been sharing what's going to happen with Xerox. He's not hiding anything. And I appreciate his honesty and his forthrightness. I appreciate the fact that the CEO of Xerox was the first one to separate out the revenue and the profit in the IT sector in this business. This was fantastic. I got super excited about that. And I got to tell you something. Wall Street's going to get super excited about it, more and more excited about it as time goes on. Because the growth of the IT services business is pretty phenomenal. So without any further ado, let's jump on the board. I want to share my thoughts with you. So we're talking about a strategy. Xerox went out and bought IT Savvy. Xerox went out and bought Lexmark. You all know why, right? Well, they bought IT Savvy because they got to deliver a different deliverable inside those customers. They need to figure out this IT services, what piece of the stack, all of the stack, how are they going to go into the market, both direct and indirect. We know that Xerox right now is doing a beta test with the indirect side. They're grabbing a lot of customers out of the direct side, very strategic customers. This was a reverse integration. They're doing a lot of things right, and they're getting a lot of growth in that sector. When Xerox went out and bought Lexmark, they did it for one damn reason. Well, because all the buyers, they're buying more A4 MFPs than they are buying A3 MFPs. The TAM for A4 MFPs is bigger than A3 MFPs. And Xerox went out and took advantage of the situation, and they bought a company called Lexmark. Quite honestly, when Xerox bought Lexmark, I was giving all my friends a bunch of crap. Why the hell didn't you buy them, I would say. Xerox got more powerful when they bought Lexmark because they increased their myth. Plus, they have a manufacturing component around where the market's going. A4 MFPs. And by the way, they also have the capability to make A3 MFPs. And they actually brought that up on the latest earnings call. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Let's look at their top line revenue for the quarter was $1,961 million. It's up $433 million, 28%. Congratulations, Xerox. Their operating margin is 3.3%. They're making some adjustments. They've got some goodwill they got to correct. There's a lot of things going on when you bring two companies together, Lexmark and Xerox, and they got to get through some of these things. They're going to get through them. But that 3.3% operating profit is, as far as Xerox is concerned, it's terrible. When they talk about going back to double-digit profit, they're not talking about, we want to return to a highly profitable company, like some other folks we see, all talk, no action. They know that 3.3% is low. And they're specific. We want to return to double-digit operating profit. And folks, whatever you want to think about Xerox, they deliver operating profit. And we got folks out of the industry, if they had a 3.3% operating profit, they'd be having a damn party. We got some folks, if they had a 3.3% operating profit, it'd be the best operating profit they've had in like 7 years. We got some folks that don't even care if they make any operating profit. When you look at their financials, at least that's what you think. Ladies and gentlemen, that $1,961 million is a big number. It puts them on an $8 billion run rate. I mean, the closest they even got to that was in the fourth quarter of 2023, and they were at $1,765 million. So you can see they're going in the right direction. That revenue's starting to show up, which is always a good thing, right? Let's look at the print and other segment. The revenue for the quarter was $1,739,000,000. It's up $297 million. Just about 21%, 20% in constant currency. I'm not too concerned about the pro forma revenue miss because there's a lot of things going on. Government shutdown is one. Tariffs, there's just a lot of things going on, and I think they can adjust the pro forma as they go forward. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, what I care about is the year-over-year growth. Xerox is getting back into that $8 billion. Xerox has an IT business that they're doing pretty damn well at. And by the way, their print and other segment was a 3.7%, margin, which is great. Let's look at that IT business. Ladies and gentlemen, total revenue is $226 million. It's up $140 million, 162.8%. I mean, this IT business that Xerox bought is a well-run business. And I spent a little bit of time with Manu, their leader. I'm watching this very close. I'm talking to some of the dealers that are in the beta test with them around the world, not just here in America. And the way Xerox did this integration with IT Savvy, it's a reverse integration. In other words, they didn't do what our friends maybe at Konica Minolta did, like let's just dump that thing in the print channel, let the print channel run and hope it all works out. There's no hope. There's no hope involved in Xerox regarding their IT services business. It's based on real business plans with real thought leaders going into the marketplace with action. They've left hope, somewhere else. They're allowing other OEMs to live off the hope model. But when you think about this IT business over there at Xerox, I want you all to put some numbers in perspective. They had an 8.1% margin, which was $18 million on the $226 million for the quarter. An IT services company can get about 15 times profit, EBITDA. So just think about this. 18 times 4 is 72 million, times 15 is 1.1 billion. In other words, Xerox and their IT business, which they're running as a separate business with its own P&L, and they're sharing all the numbers with you. Again, thank you to the CEO of Xerox for doing this, because Xerox is the only company that's doing this. The rest of them will share some revenue numbers, but they don't share the profit specifically for the IT sector. And not only that, Xerox breaks it out between products and services. In the services revenue, look at that number. So for the third quarter, the services in the IT was $57 million. And ladies and gentlemen, that's an increase of $26 million from the year prior. But look at the value they're bringing to Xerox with this IT business. Right now, that IT business, simple math, it's worth about $1.1 billion. I wanted to compare that a little bit, and I know you guys see this a lot on my show, but I think it's important because you got these folks out there like Rico running around bragging how big they are in a top-line revenue. They're the greatest in the world. Well, they don't make any money. The money they make is so ridiculous. 2.5% operating profit for the whole company in 2024. When you look at their digital services business unit, which includes office services, their IT, if you will, plus their MFPs going out, together that was $13.1 billion. They'll separate out the revenue. The IT piece was $6.3 billion for FY 2024. But they don't separate out the profit. They lump it all together. And by the way, lumping it all together, $13.1 billion in total revenue. They had an operating profit of 1.7%. Who gives a crap? That's terrible. And if Xerox wants to build, a multi-billion-dollar IT business and they're going to be happy with 1% or 1.7% operating profit, I'm going to be screaming like mad at them too. I think about our friends over there at Konica Minolta. What could I say? They don't know how to make any money. It's been a train wreck mess since the year 2020. And their FY 2024 $438.2 million operating profit loss. When you look at their DWDX business, total revenue for FY 2024 was $606.9 million. And again, they lump all that stuff together in their digital workplace. They'll break out the revenue, but we're not going to tell you what the profit is. And when they lump it all together, the profit they do tell you is miserably low. Xerox, they've identified $1 billion in gross savings and profit improvement in the synergies. Those synergies being between IT Savvy coming together with Xerox and Lexmark coming together with Xerox. I do want to take my magic pen out, and I'm going to circle something on the board, and I'm going to kind of give my friends over at Xerox a little crap here. But you got targeted mix, you want 20%. I think it's way too damn low, so I'm circling that. And I think it should be 30%. Your run rate is $8 billion. 30% would be $2.4 billion in IT services. Now you're starting to build something nice. I believe if you focus on 20%, you might come in at 20%, but who cares? I want you to come in at 30% or really close. If you focus on 30, by the end of 2026 into 2027, maybe you're at 25, 27%. And at the end of the day, I believe because Xerox shares their numbers, because they throw it out there for the public to see, because when they go on those earning calls, they talk about reality. If they put it at 30%, they're going to have to justify why the hell they're not hitting it. And I don't think they're going to want to do that, so they'll probably hit it. But ladies and gentlemen, if they could build a $2.4 billion IT services business inside that Xerox ecosystem, get to that run rate, get up there to that $9 billion, $10 billion, they'd be doing something pretty remarkable. Xerox talks about the cost savings. Xerox, like all the actors in our industry, are going to have rifts. That's just the reality. I predicted not too long ago, a couple episodes ago, that I think the industry is going to go down 25% in human capital. It's going to be massive. There has to be a readjustment. Ladies and gentlemen, the industry's shrinking. We got way too much supply versus demand. There has to be adjustments. And I want to ask you all, who else is publicly discussing the painful things that they're going to have to do in those businesses? Xerox discusses this stuff, and they discuss it with details and numbers. And it's sad when it involves humans. It's sad when people lose their job. But at the end of the day, we all have to face some reality. People are going to lose their jobs. And the industry is going to consolidate. And I would ask all my dealer friends, what are you doing in your business that's painful? If you haven't done anything in your business that's painful, then you're not working hard enough to adjust your business for a different future. When I look at the expectations for our friends over here at Xerox, they expect a $400 million cash flow in 2026, free cash flow. I think they'll get there. But there's a lot of things they got to do. There's a lot of painful things still to come. And at the end of the day, none of this comes easy. And doing it in front of Wall Street is a little bit hard. Now I want to talk about Kyocera and Xerox. I did that video and I said Kyocera could buy Xerox. I did all the math. It makes a lot of sense. When you start thinking that way, then you start thinking, what else could they do together? What if Xerox and Kyocera formed a manufacturing venture? Think about it. How could Xerox benefit from a manufacturing venture with their Lexmark acquisition? You think about it. If Kyocera and Xerox got together and said, you know what, we want to form a manufacturing venture, Kyocera, we want to own X amount of it. Kyocera is going to own X amount of it. And then Xerox says, hey, we'll give you all the Lexmark intellectual property. We'll give you all the Lexmark factories. You can shut down the ones you want. You do whatever you want with it. We're going to buy all our machines from Kyocera and put the Xerox name on it. What if? Ladies and gentlemen, even if they did that, it'd be amazing. It'd be pretty damn disruptive, wouldn't it? So never say never. Always look at how things could be based on why they should be. And I believe Kyocera and Xerox could have some major synergies coming together. By the way, do I need to remind everybody that Kyocera has $9.5 billion in KDDI stock that they're going to sell, and they already sold some of it. So they definitely have the money to do something disruptive. I want to talk about this debt as we wrap this up. Xerox has a total of $4.4 billion in debt. $1.6 billion of that is financing allocated debt. Xerox, will you just get rid of all of that, sell it off to Peak and be done with it? Get it off the books. Just get away from it. And then I think people will look at you a little bit different. Even though that $1.6 billion finance allocated debt is a pretty good debt because it's spread across all kinds of customers, right? Plus you get a pretty good return on it. But at the end of the day, I think you'd be better off without it. Get out of that business. Just get out of it altogether. Let Peak be your partner there and be done with it. And folks, at the end of the day, with Xerox getting rid of that $1.6 billion, their core debt of $2.8 billion, their added revenue from Lexmark, their added revenue from IT Savvy, the operating margin that they're getting out of IT Savvy, the aspirations of the operating margin they're going to get out of the print, the free cash flow that they're anticipating to get, they could clean up the debt pretty quick. I'm not concerned about the debt at all. My concern with Xerox is to stay focused on the reinvention and to make sure that IT services business goes out in the marketplace playing by the right game so they can bring in the most operating profit they possibly can, and they sell to the right customer. They educate their partners on the indirect side to do it the right way, and then they go out and they figure out how to add to the stack in some creative way, and they will. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe the folks at Xerox live in a hope world. If hope alone is navigating the train towards improvement, it will likely derail at the junction requiring action. I put that realism out there this weekend as I was preparing this episode. But I don't see any hope as a business model at Xerox. What I see at Xerox is action. And I've said it before, they've been pretty bold through these last couple of years. And quite honestly, the rest of the actors in the industry need to start getting bold themselves, because everybody watching me knows this: status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck there, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.